What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of What Do They Know podcast. Today, the guys will react to all the action from around the league, including their take on some overreactions. They'll also list out their top 5 teams through the first 2 weeks and give you some fantasy standouts from this week. But hey, what do they know?
What do they know? Well, we are about to find out what's going on, everybody. This is the What Do They Know podcast. My name is Nick Hoskins. I'm with my buddy over here, Jeff Garcia. Welcome to week 2. How are you, man? How was your week?
It was quite eventful. You know, you got your work and stuff like that, so you just focus on what you need to focus on, and then look forward to the end of the week, which is football season.
I know that's the thing is it's bittersweet, right? Because during the week I'm always looking forward to Sundays to watch football, but then it's like Sunday's over, and I'm like, dang it. Now I got to go back to work.
Week refreshes.
It's just a vicious cycle.
Yep. And I got to before we start, I got to give a shout out to my boy Steve. He gave me a sneaky link to view all these games whenever I want or wherever I'm at. So even at work,
Awesome.
Management, you didn't hear that.
Awesome, Steve. The federal government's probably looking into you now because of Jeff. But
you're welcome. You're welcome, Steve. You're welcome, Steve.
All right. Well, good. Good for Steve. Good for you. I
absolutely
don't have that link, but that's okay.
Not the sneak link.
All right, let's kick it off. We're gonna officially term this segment Jeff's Random Thought to kick off our show, because I don't have random thoughts usually, and Jeff just has a million of them running through his head. So give us your random thought this week.
I live and breathe random thoughts. This is where this gets me through the day during the week until we get to Sundays.
All right, let's hear it.
So this week, basically, I'm thinking about all those commercials about kids' toys back when we were kids. Those 90s retro type of commercials, and the sock and boppers and the I guess little UFO type of things.
Yeah, my dad and I used to go at it with each other on those things.
Yeah. So wait, you had some of them?
I had some.
Oh, see, I've never met a soul. I never met a soul.
Oh, I had them.
Who had like sock and boppers and all these things that were advertised on those commercials type of thing.
Yep.
So let me.
That was your random thought.
Let me shake your hand.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Honestly, I always wondered
I'm that person.
Yep, you're that guy.
I'm the infomercial guy. I'm the
infomercial guy.
I'm the one that bought them.
You're the ones who kept them in business for a while.
Yep. Stand by, people.
Stand by.
Technical difficulties with our microphone.
Right. There you go.
All right, we're back.
But yeah, in terms of wanting things, I think a lot of the kids wanted a lot of the toys that were advertised, but I always wondered who gets these things?
Ended up buying them?
Who gets these? How are these guys keeping these commercials going?
So, I know it's called Random Thought, so it kind of goes without saying, but what made you think of that?
Videos, basically.
Okay.
Videos. One thing leads to another type of thing, and then this connects to this, connects to that, and then boom. It's just one of those things that right. That's why I always have a random thought every week. It's
called Jeff's Random Thought, folks, because he's always got some random stuff going on up there.
Sometimes it's scary.
All right, well, good. We will dive into week 2. Lots of stuff to go over, lots of football. We got to watch a good amount of the action today, so we'll have some good breakdowns, some good analysis. We will start by answering a question that was sent in. It was actually sent in after last week, after week 1, after we had already recorded. But we'll kind of address last week and this week, because this team kind of had a big game today, and it was all about the Giants. The person that sent in the question wanted, she was pretty depressed after week 1, and rightfully so, right? Wanting to know if there was anything that we saw positive from that game. Obviously, we were recording while we were watching the game, so we were I know reacting to some of it kind of in the moment, but. I mean, as far as week 1 goes, I'll just say no. I didn't. Let me take a step back. The one positive thing I saw was that first drive before the block field goal, right? Because their run game was actually moving it on Dallas, and then the block field goal happened, and it all kind of just snowballed from there,
unraveled type of thing.
So really not a whole lot to be happy about last week, and it started out more of the same this week.
Right.
They were down 20-8. I was really sweating my Giants analysis during the NFC East breakdown, because if you remember, I thought pretty highly of the Giants. And they were laying an egg today to the Cardinals, of all teams, who are basically openly tanking in an attempt to get Caleb Williams. So that was going to be a whole different conversation. But and they were down 20-8 with like 9 minutes left in the game.
Yeah. Oh well. I mean, I think I saw the
28-8. 28-8.
Okay.
Yeah. So huge comeback from the Giants today to win 31-28, last second field goal to basically keep their season alive. Obviously, Daniel Jones played really well. They did lose Saquon today. So we'll see where that goes. But what are your thoughts on the Giants so far?
Yeah, in terms of last week, it was pretty brutal to watch live, even during our recordings. It was just all Dallas after that first drive.
Yep.
Obviously, you'd have to challenge the Giants' mental, I guess, attitude and
Toughness,
fortitude type of situation. And I mean, they bounced back in a big way today. They faced the same sort of adversity and game outline that happened today with the Cardinals. With the Cardinals jumping out big ahead pretty early. But yeah, they rebounded today. Obviously, it's against lesser competition, Cardinals compared to the Cowboys. But in terms of at least putting up a fight and then coming back and even winning that game, the Giants showed a lot of resilience today. So positives last week, I'd take it with a grain of salt type of thing. It's just one of those things that just snowballed on top of them. And they just spiraled out of control, and they just couldn't stop it, regardless of what they did. But today they put a clamp on that and really rebounded in a big way, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said, I think it's not dramatic to say that they really saved their season today.
Right, you lose to the Cardinals, and all of a sudden you're asking questions about that locker room, Daboll and everybody else in that coaching staff and the front office.
Yep.
So to say that's a overstatement. It's week 2 type of thing, but at the same time, that's an opponent you should beat.
Yeah, and it was more important not only going 0-2, but next week you have the Niners on Thursday Night Football on a short week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more than likely 0-3 staring you right in the face.
Right.
So at least they have a win going into that tough game against the Niners. So
absolutely.
Thank you for the question. We will jump into some of our top stories from this week.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that we saw that just jumped out to us. I'll let you go first with what you have on your radar from this week.
Okay. Well, in terms of me, I got the Bills and the Seahawks both coming back from, I guess, week 1 duds that they had. The Bills with the Jets, and then the Seahawks with the Rams over there in Seattle. So they came back. The Bills handled the Raiders pretty handily, and then the Seahawks had to go into overtime to beat the Lions, but I think the Lions are going to be great anyway. So that was a really hard-fought battle there. So just two teams that are going to be in dogfights for the top of their division. I think it showed a lot of character for them to come back and put up a W.
Yeah, Josh Allen looked a lot better today too, right? I mean, obviously we didn't really get a chance to talk about Monday's game, but he was a turnover machine on Monday. Four total turnovers.
Yep.
His completion percentage today was through the roof. Made good decisions. I don't think he turned the ball over at all today.
Nope.
He did have one. I know a lot of analysts were also criticizing how he puts his body in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
After Monday, he did have one, what I would call like Superman type of dive today. So he's still doing that.
Right.
I think that really needs to stop. But as far as being careless with the ball, he didn't really do that today. He was maybe just a little careless with his body.
Right. I mean, after last week, I was talking to Steve and a couple of the guys at work about firing McDermott type of thing. Like you have the Jets who, I mean, no offense to you guys, but Zach Wilson is definitely a step down or two from Aaron Rodgers, and you basically had that entire franchise on their knees when Aaron Rodgers came down, and to let that game slip away from you like that, it was really, I don't know how to. And you had this whole Stephon Diggs thing coming into from the offseason into the season, so it was just one of those things where it's like, how do you even believe in the coach at that point? Honestly, they had some tempered expectations about the Bills coming into this year anyway, and I mean,
we both talked about it, right?
Yep. And I mean, big picture going into the season, you probably look at the Jets and you settle for a 1-1 split season series. So, but to lose in that manner, when you had Aaron Rodgers go down after 4 plays, basically having no impact on that game, it was rough. But they came back big today. So, yeah, definitely settling down what they want to do during the course of the season.
Yeah, it's funny. Obviously we didn't really get a chance to talk about that game, and me being a Jets fan, I was all over the place on Monday.
Yeah.
I did a little impromptu reaction to that game and posted it on Tuesday, just kind of going over my thoughts. But
Right.
I was all over the place on Monday. To your point, you're right. There's no reason the Jets should have won that game.
Right.
When Rodgers goes down and the whole air gets let out of the entire stadium, the Bills should have won that game and won it handily. Should have never even been close.
Right.
So for them to come back today obviously was impressive and shows them. But what I was getting at is, after that game, obviously I was pumped up. I was clapping. There's a funny video of me on my home Nest camera reacting to the punt return touchdown, in which I basically woke up my entire house. But after I kind of calmed down and really thought about it, I was like, after this game, I'm still more optimistic about the Bills season than I am the Jets. And I think today kind of showed that with both games.
Right.
And we'll get into the Jets and Dallas game a little bit later, but
no Jets gear, by the way.
No Jets gear today. So
that shows you what happened.
You guys can figure that out
without even looking at the scoreboard.
That should tell you what happened, or I guess what didn't happen today.
Right.
But yeah, I think that the Bills are going to be fine. The Seahawks, I'm still not as sold on the Seahawks as I was to start the season.
Right.
I had them as a playoff team, and I would say that that's not a certainty at this point based off of the first 2 weeks. But both teams definitely bounced back.
Right.
Okay, my two top headlines this week. Number one, I think Anthony Richardson is legit. We talked about it briefly last week about how they were, I think, 10 minutes away from knocking off Jacksonville.
Right. Yep, they played hard.
He played well last week, and then obviously he left today's game with a concussion, so he didn't get to play a full game. But in the short amount of time he played, he had 2, I think it was over 20-yard rushing touchdowns, and had them up 14-0 before he left because of injury. So we talked a lot about how dynamic the conversation was around him before the season. Everybody's, we had so many people saying, oh, he's terrible, I don't know why he even got drafted in the top 10.
Right.
And then we had people saying he's going to be phenomenal, and so far he's leaning towards that way.
Right.
He didn't, obviously they lost against Jacksonville last week. They were able to beat the Texans today, even with him going out for injury. But in the time that he's played, he's looked great. And I've actually been really, really surprised, because before the season I heard more negative than I did positive about him.
There's definitely a lot of question marks.
And I think that he's showing up way sooner than people predicted. I think that Indianapolis fans have reason to be very, very excited.
Right.
If he can stay healthy, because if you remember the way the game ended last week, he went out after a vicious hit against Jacksonville towards the goal line, really being careless with his body, and ended up Gardner Minshew came in, I think, for the 4th down play, like right at the end of the game, and Richardson was on the sideline because he had just gotten hurt, and then obviously today he left because of injury. So he definitely needs to kind of learn very, very quickly about taking care of his body.
Right.
But I think he's one of my biggest surprises so far this year.
Honestly, out of the 3 rookie quarterbacks that were taken in the top 4, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Anthony Richardson, I figured he was the biggest likelihood to be a bust, to be honest. No offense to
100%
or anything.
100%.
There's just so many question marks there in terms of his arm and his accuracy and all that stuff, and whether he was going to turn into just something that to give hope for the fans rather than a legit quarterback. But he's proving the doubters wrong. He's proving us wrong, I'm pretty sure. I had a lot of questions with that, but and as long as he keeps himself healthy, which is going to be a big, I guess.
Well, now he's got to be in the protocol, right? Yeah, he's got to show that he can come back and play.
Yep, it's going to be a big adjustment because, like with Josh Allen, they tell him to tone it down, but
it's just the way he plays.
Just the way you've been taught to go 100% every play, and sometimes that backfires on you, and even for the worst of it. But with a concussion, it's those things can pile up pretty fast. So he's going to have to take it a little bit slow and rely more on that arm.
Yeah. So I'm excited about him. I hope he's able to get back out there week 3 so we can see what he can do. My second biggest story, my second top story of the week, is Micah Parsons. And I mean, the way I don't watch a ton of Dallas games, right? And even last week when we were recording, we weren't that invested. We weren't, really didn't get to watch it in detail. Obviously, being a Jet fan, I watched that entire game today.
Right.
And Micah Parsons is a specimen. Like that dude is amazing. He's a game wrecker. And quite honestly, if he keeps playing the way he has the first 2 weeks, he should win MVP. Not forget defensive player of the year. Forget defensive player of the year. He should win MVP.
Right.
Because he I mean, we got to put it in perspective, right? The Jets O-line is not anything special, but he wrecked that game. Zach Wilson had 0 time to throw at all today.
Yeah, single-handedly.
At all. He single-handedly, and he kind of catapults the rest of the defense, right? When he's rushing the quarterback and putting pressure and blocking lanes and all that, then the other linebackers get to feast. The cornerbacks get to feast off of bad throws, and so it all kind of plays a part. And he is the one that kicks that off because I mean, my goodness, I truly was blown away by watching him play today.
Right.
So that and just the Dallas defense as a whole, obviously he's a large part of that.
All right.
But Dallas's defense is very, very good.
Yep, and as all football people know and say, it starts in the trenches type of thing.
100%.
And Michael Parsons is just a force to be reckoned with down there on that defensive line. So, and we saw it last week with the Giants. I mean, there's a reason they shut them out. And that defense scored about 30 points in fantasy.
Yeah.
So it's
and they probably were pretty close today too.
Yeah, in terms of that. So it's just one of those things where it starts up front, and Michael Parsons there's not really a lot more guys you can be better off building around than Michael Parsons.
Yeah. Side note, we know how much money Nick Bosa just got from San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, you're gonna have to double that for Micah Parsons. Holy smokes, that dude is just fun. I mean, Zach Wilson didn't stand a chance today.
Right,
didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, coming in. I mean, obviously, coming in, you had Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback, but so Zach Wilson coming in with a week of preparation and whatnot. Short week. It's just still one of those things where I don't feel like any amount of time can prepare you for a person like Michael Parsons that's just gonna blow up every single play that you're in and be in your face all day. And I mean, I know I had questions about the Jets offensive line coming into the season. Yep. At the same time, Michael Parsons just picked them apart in every facet.
Yep.
So
sure did.
We'll see if the Jets can make some adjustments and whatnot, but it really hurts. This is the types of things where it hurts to not have Rodgers, because I feel like Rodgers can definitely pick apart what he's going to try to. Mike Parsons is trying to do and adjust the O-line,
slow down that pass rush at least a little bit,
right? Yeah. And so it's one of those things. But Zach Wilson, for the most part, I felt like even with Michael Parsons being there, I felt like he looked a little more composed than what we've seen him in the past. So it was just one of those things where it was just a bad matchup overall.
Yeah, I mean, that game as a whole, we can kind of just quickly break down. I was very impressed with Zach Wilson up until the last 10, 11 minutes of the game when it was completely just out of reach.
Yeah, he was just trying to force things.
Trying to make something out of nothing,
right?
And he ended up throwing a couple picks. So his stat line, in my opinion, looks way worse than it was,
right?
Because the few times that he did have a spot to actually step and just make a solid throw, obviously he had that 68-yard touchdown to Garrett Wilson. He looked great there. He actually led a surprisingly good 2-minute drive at the end of the first half where they were able to get a field goal. It took off and scrambled a couple times, made some good decisions, quick decisions to use his legs.
Right.
He had one throw to Alan Lazard on the sideline that ended up getting called back for holding, but it was just a dime. It was just a beautiful throw.
Yeah.
And so he actually, of all things, I was most concerned about him today. And he is not the reason they lost that game. I would argue that their defense, that's supposed to be phenomenal, is the reason they lost that game, because they couldn't stop a nosebleed today.
Right.
Dallas's offense just picked them apart in any which way that they wanted to.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb feasted today.
Yeah, he sure did.
he found holes all over the place, and he waited there for Dak Prescott to give him the ball. And they had Tony Pollard and Vaughn. I can't remember his first name,
Deuce.
but Deuce Vaughn.
Yep.
Thank you. Kind of running down their throats and running it on the edges and whatnot. So yeah, they definitely had their way with the Jets defense today.
Yeah, I expected it. It wouldn't have surprised me if you told me that the Jets were going to lose that game, but I kind of expected it to be a 1-possession game or maybe a 10-point game.
Right.
But gosh, not the way that it went today. So that was that aspect of it was a little surprising. But overall, I didn't walk away shaking my head saying, "Oh my gosh, we're doomed for the whole season."
Right.
Because I don't think it's going to be. I don't think Zach Wilson played that terribly today. I really don't.
Right. I think the defense, obviously, they're limited to errors and whatnot. So because of the offense, no offense to Zach Wilson, but he's not going to put up the points that maybe Aaron Rodgers would have had if he was healthy. But it's just going to be, rather than that defense, I think it's going to be how far those tackles and the offensive line is going to carry this team. Because if they can't adjust and hold the fort, then it's that offense has no chance of scoring many points, and all of a sudden the defense is going to look more terrible than what it is, because all of a sudden the offense is going 3 and out, making turnovers, and that's just longer.
Romo even said it in the fourth quarter, right? He said the Jets defense just looks exhausted.
Yeah.
They've been out there the whole game. They had a couple long drives, Dallas did, and then you have a long drive on for Dallas. You're on the field the whole time, and then your offense turns around and goes 3 and out. I mean, you don't stand a chance when you do that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what defense you have. If they're exhausted, they're not going to. And being on offense is definitely a lot more fun than defense. So those guys are always going to be, I guess, coming up with spurts of energy like CeeDee Lamb and whatnot, Tony Pollard.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things where you got to hope for the offensive line to adjust and be better.
Yep. All right, so those are our top stories from this week. Now we're kind of introduce a new segment. We're gonna call this the Prisoner of the Moment segment, where basically you're reacting right away to what you saw, and maybe it's an overreaction. So we're going to each throw out some statements that maybe we're going to throw them out, and then the other person has to tell us if they think that that's an overreaction or not.
Right.
So I'll let you go with your statements first, and I will answer if I think it's an overreaction or not.
Okay. So my first one is going to be to fire Brandon Staley from the Chargers.
That's not an overreaction at all. I don't even have to think about that.
Fire him now.
I don't even have to think about that. Week 1, I won't really necessarily put on him, right? That was a dogfight between 2 high-flying offenses.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, they lost to the Titans today, who I don't think is really going to go
no, they're not a contender, really, for the AFC.
And, I saw a tweet today that basically said what you said in our breakdowns of the AFC West, is that every single year the Chargers lose in the weirdest way every single week.
I'm telling you,
and that's coaching, right? That comes down to coaching. Like when you lose a game that you shouldn't have lost,
you would feel like
in some form or fashion, that's coaching.
It's just such a weird thing, because the Chargers have been losing this like this and for years, even before Staley. So it's just one of those things where it's just like a bug that just does not.
There's no reason. There's no reason that team should be 0-2.
No.
They have way too much talent on offense. They have pieces on defense.
All right.
There's no way that they should be 0-2.
Yeah.
Just at the end of the day, and I think it could be something as simple as take Trevor Lawrence, for example.
Mm-hmm.
He did not. Granted, he was a rookie, but when he had Urban Meyer as his head coach.
Yeah.
My goodness, he looked terrible, right? And then you bring in Doug Peterson last year, first year in the offense. Trevor Lawrence looked like a completely different quarterback. And I think that could be a situation for Herbert. Not that he looks horrible, right? He doesn't.
Right.
But I just think that shows what he could become, is if he has a different head coach who maybe puts more of an emphasis on him and is a better teacher and creates the right environment for Justin Herbert. I think that that team should be explosive.
Right. Yeah, the offense, I feel like that offense is always the solution, but at some point, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just they can never score enough to compensate for how they get outplayed somehow. And yeah, it goes down to coaching, and I think they need someone that I guess knows how to win type of thing, or they know how to close out games, especially in the fourth quarter, because the fourth quarter is where they always lose it. It's not even the first 3 quarters; it's the fourth quarter that always bites them.
Yep.
Right there, and they just can never cross that finish line.
They were winning the majority of the day today.
Yep, they can never win without face planting at the end of the day, and that's just like you said. It comes down to coaching, but I think there's something. There's just something going on there in terms of a curse that I just cannot shake.
Yep.
And then my second overreaction is Bears should move on from Justin Fields.
Whew. That's a good one.
They're 0-2 now.
That's a good one.
Justin Fields he's looked all right, but it looks like he still wants to run the ball rather than pass the ball type of thing. It's just one of those things where I'm not sure if trading away that number 1 overall pick was. I mean, you got a lot of pieces, but would you rather start fresh?
Got a lot of pieces.
Yep.
Yeah, I think right now the hot seat, in my opinion, in football is the front office of the Bears. I really do.
Yep.
I really do, because, and we talked about this during the breakdowns, right? When we were talking about the NFC North, I brought that up. I said one of the things that when you trade the number 1 pick and you have an unproven quarterback,
right,
you better be right.
Yep.
And so far, again, it's only been two games. It's a short sample size or a small sample size, but he has not taken that next step.
No,
their offense looks stagnant. They're not putting up points. You don't see those electric highlight plays that you saw last year. So you could even argue he's taking a step back.
Yeah, I think he had like 4 rushes for like 3 yards.
Yeah.
And it's just like you take away his biggest, asset, which is his legs. All of a sudden you force him to become a quarterback type of thing. And I'm not sure he's ready for that level of throwing and being a complete quarterback type of thing. But he threw in 2 interceptions today, and it's just one of those things where they're trying to put pieces around him, but at the same time, is Justin Fields going to be the answer at the end of the day?
So I heard something very interesting, and I'll give ESPN Radio credit for this. I heard it this week, and this is a little, obviously in front offices, you're always forward thinking, right? You're not just thinking this season, you're thinking 2, 3, 4 years in advance.
Right.
I heard someone bring up this week that obviously the GM Ryan Poles of the Bears, he did not draft Justin Fields.
No.
Right. So it's not his choice. It's not, his guy, quote unquote. And one of the arguments made this week was that the reason they did what they did and they traded all these picks, they traded the number 1 pick, they got DJ Moore, was that the jury was still out on Justin Fields, and they got all these picks because they feel that next year's quarterback draft is a better draft class. And so they're going to use this year to evaluate him, and they have picks to potentially move up and get one of the good quarterbacks next year if they need to.
Yeah, and they already have their number 1 wide receiver too in DJ.
Exactly. So that was really interesting to me, because that could be the only reason that would explain to me why you would trade the number 1 pick if you weren't 1,000% sold on Justin Fields already. Right? Because if you're doing that, you have to be sold on him.
Right.
Unless it's this scenario that they're describing, which, again, that's pretty forward thinking. That's a very interesting way to examine your team and to
it's
prepare.
Like a plan B type of thing.
It is.
And I mean, obviously you don't want that sort of information to get out because you got Justin Fields.
Right.
You're saying I'm putting all my eggs in that basket and you're my guy type of thing.
Yep.
But at the same time, the scheme's going on.
It's almost as if they're looking at it as a win-win, right? So the first best case scenario, Justin Fields blows up this year. He's the guy. You have your quarterback. Worst case scenario, you still have picks to move on and get your guy next year. So they kind of look at it as a win-win.
Right.
That's an interesting storyline for me. But I think that so to answer your question, I don't know if you move on from him yet, because who the heck is even the backup there? I don't think you can move on from him. I think that this season it's his team. Right. I think that would be an overreaction to bench him, because then you're not accomplishing anything. Right. You have to finish out this year with him one way or the other, and figure out what you're going to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they have some sort of deadline in their heads of saying he has to show us X, Y, and Z before week 8, 10, whatever you want to call it, before we start making plans about who we're scouting and how we're scouting them type of thing. Yep. But it also brings an excellent point of next year with the Cardinals, just looking ahead with their situation with Kyler Murray and potentially Caleb Williams. What do you do there? And I know obviously looking ahead is a little premature and whatnot, but it just, that's where my head kind of goes, type of thing.
I can answer that for you, because I'm not a Kyler Murray fan.
Neither am I,
by any means.
Nope.
So I'm all about kicking him to the curb.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
Who would even take that contract on?
I don't know.
That's the type of thing that, luckily for the Chicago right now, Justin Fields is still on his rookie contract, so that's a lot easier to move instead of Kyler Murray with all those years and all that money going on there. But Chicago is definitely in a better position than the Cardinals were.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about him at length, but like to
Mhm.
me, you knew everything that you needed to know about Kyler Murray the second that story came out about the clause in his contract that required him to watch film.
Right.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's just not, if you have to do that, that's not your guy.
Right.
That is not your guy that is your franchise leader. And so, we're shifting gears here from the Bears to the Cardinals for a minute, but no, I think that the Cardinals definitely are doing the right thing by maybe not so secretly tanking for Caleb Williams.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with it. Yep.
All right. So my overreactions, my first one, the Bengals will miss the playoffs.
That's a tough one because they're in a tough division. You got the Ravens there at 2-0.
Now they're 0-2 with 2 division losses. They're 0-2 in their division after 2 weeks.
Yeah, Browns, Ravens are 2-0. Browns play tomorrow, Monday night. We're recording Sunday, obviously.
Yep.
So, then that AFC is just loaded. Starting 0-2 is really crippling, especially how they've looked in terms of their offense. They just have not been able to sustain drives or whatnot. I'm going to go with this is not an overreaction. I think they're in a real realm of hurt right now in terms of what they can do. There's not a lot of positives coming out of that offense, even though Joe Burrow is trying to work back from that calf injury, and I think he was limping
at the end of the game today. That was what I was going to say.
I think he got re-aggravated that a little bit. So, in terms of how you want to approach the rest of the season, whether you're going to call it a wash and try to take care of Joe Burrow as much as possible, or you try to go all in type of thing, because your window, I guess, is closing. Especially the more length we get into Joe Burrow's contract, the higher his cap hit hits. It limits your resources financially in terms of building around him. So, and it's just going to be one of those things where you're going to have to make a decision. But starting 0-2 is just really, it's a big crutch on your playoff chances, especially in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say for them, they started 0-2 last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then we all know where they ended up, which was the AFC Championship game. But they just look.
Yeah, they don't
look explosive. Right. They have no rhythm. Burrow doesn't look like himself. Obviously, we talked about him walking off with a limp at the end of the game.
Right.
So I'm concerned about them. And that kind of transitions into my next question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is the AFC not as strong as we initially thought? Is that an overreaction? And here's why I say that. Obviously, the Bengals are 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs are 0-2. Excuse me, Chargers are 0-2.
Chargers. Yep.
Chiefs are 1-1, but them and the Jaguars, neither of them looked phenomenal today. I was so excited to watch that game today, and I was bored out of my mind at one point because it was fumble after fumble, punt after punt, interception. Like it just was not a smooth game to watch at all.
Right.
And neither of those offenses looked fluid. Travis Kelce had a couple drops.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you talk about the Chargers are 0-2, the Broncos are 0-2, Bengals, Chiefs and Jaguars maybe not looking as solid as we thought. We already talked about the Bills. I don't know. I just feel like maybe that was an overreaction in the beginning in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
It was that everybody was as high on the AFC as they were. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in terms of the AFC, I guess coming off of last year, it's hard to match up because obviously every team's trying to improve and whatnot. I guess with the Bengals going 0-2, I guess you can kind of say the rest of the division, or the rest of the conference, I should say, is catching up to them. Obviously, Jacksonville is improved. They didn't look at today kind of offensively. Trevor Lawrence definitely didn't look Trevor Lawrence-y, I guess,
no.
for a lack of a better term. But, yeah, it's just one of those things where, yeah, maybe the AFC is taking a little bit longer to I guess, adjust with the offensive schemes that they showed last year, but they're definitely looking more. I've always thought the AFC was more like a ground and pound type of thing, especially because of the AFC North. That's like the first thing that comes to mind is that ground and pound type of thing.
Yep.
And the AFC has just always been that way. And obviously with the Jets, not to
well,
poke fun.
That plays a big part in it, right?
Not to poke fun at them, 100%. But you guys were looking at like quarterback issues for a very long time until Rodgers, but now it's become one of those things where you have to ground and pound.
Yep.
And it's just one of those things where obviously ground and pound isn't as for lack of a better term, sexy and as attractive to audiences like us to watch the game. But it's definitely one of those things where defenses are definitely trying to catch up, and it looks like they are. You got Jim Schwartz over there. I'm very high on Jim Schwartz over there in Cleveland, and then you got over here. We're watching the game right now. Miami and New England. Vic Fangio, a long time defensive coordinators, adjusting and playing advantage with their personnel type of thing. So for me, the AFC might not be as strong as last year, but at the same time, I think they're it's definitely a toss up of you got like 9 good teams there that can really make a run during the postseason. So I'll say it's an overreaction for now, because I think they have a lot of teams that can make that run to the Super Bowl and win it all. But in terms of right now, they definitely haven't looked as explosive and as attractive as they did last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so we're going to do our power rankings, right? We're each going to go 1 through 5 and just list through the first 2 weeks who we think is the top 5 in the NFL.
Right.
So I'll let you go first.
Okay. So number 1, I got the 49ers.
Okay.
I think they just have a really great balance of offensive, defensive schemes and personnel. So for me, 49ers look like a clear-cut Super Bowl favorite there.
Okay.
Number 2, I got the Eagles. Then high-powered offense. We saw that on Thursday night against Minnesota. So I got the Eagles up there, obviously coming back after a Super Bowl loss, trying to avenge that. Number 3, I got the Cowboys. The Cowboys are really looking very impressive over the course of the first 2 weeks. 40-0 against the Giants, and then obviously today 30-10 against the Jets, especially against that superb defense that the Jets have. So I have them at 3. Number 4, I got the Ravens. Even though with all those injuries, they're still pounding out wins. John Harbaugh is just that coach. He's that dude who will always keep producing players regardless of where they are in terms of injuries. And then 5, I got the Chiefs coming back in. Obviously, they haven't looked impressive the first 2 weeks, but I think it'll be one of those things where they'll ramp up during midseason form. So to me, you can't count out the Super Bowl champions.
Yep. Okay. So I'm on board with all that. I had one team. I didn't have the Ravens in there, only because I need to see more from Lamar before I do that. Obviously, I picked them to win the Super Bowl,
right?
But they don't look like they have an offense yet to do that. They're 2-0. That's great. I'm feeling good about that from that perspective. But I need to see a little bit more from Lamar before I throw them in there.
Fair enough.
Me personally. So number 1, and I actually have made a change since we've been sitting here.
You calling an audible?
I called an audible.
You're calling an audible.
I kept the teams the same. I just switched up the order.
Omaha.
Okay. All right. So number 1, I had the Dolphins.
You had the Dolphins.
I'm sitting here watching this game, and the Dolphins, they scare the crap out of me. The Dolphins have the best offense in the NFL. I can't think of a team right now that can outscore them.
I wanted to put the Dolphins in here, but I didn't want to put them in there without seeing them against New England first, like a complete game.
And New England supposedly has a really, really good defense.
Right. Bill Belichick's always
yes. He's always going to take away what you do best, which is the deep ball.
Right.
For Miami specifically, and they are just dinking and dunking and throwing all these little gadget routes all over the field. Right now at halftime, they're up 17-3 against New England.
Miami's biggest, I guess, crutch is themselves, to be honest. I think I read a stat on there that they're 4th most penalized team in NFL. I mean, obviously it's week 2, but at the same time, the only people who are going to stop you on offense is yourselves. If you get holding calls, if you get offensive pass interference and all this little ticky-tack stuff, it's going to put you in 1st and long, 2nd and long type of stuff. And obviously you have the weapons to overcome that, but obviously you don't want to play from at that sort of position.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, it's only 1.5 games of football for them right now, but I've already seen enough to put them number 1.
I like it.
I think that they are really, really good.
Legit. Yeah.
All right, number 2. This is from here. It's pretty similar to what you have, right? Okay. So I have the Niners at 2. I have Dallas 3. I have them ahead of the Eagles.
Okay.
Just because the Eagles haven't looked impressive to me. And then I have the Eagles at 4, and then the Chiefs. So pretty similar to you with really the one exception being the Dolphins and the Ravens, and then a little bit different order. Right. One thing I wanted to talk about with the Eagles real quick, and I almost put this in one of my top stories because I feel like it could be potentially a sneaky story.
Are you going to go with AJ Brown?
I am going to go with AJ
Oh,
Brown.
I read that line.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think that could be a sneaky story throughout the season. For those who didn't see the game on Thursday Night Football, Eagles and Vikings, the Eagles were up pretty handily at this point. I don't know. I can't remember what the score of the game was. I want to say it was before it got close, right? It was like a two possession game.
Yeah.
The Eagles were rolling offensively, and there was a pretty animated, I don't know if I call it heated, but animated conversation between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts.
Right.
And there was a lot of conversation in the national media afterwards, after the game, the next day. And I tend to agree, like what is AJ Brown doing when he's complaining about getting touches when you're winning?
Right.
If you're losing that game, heck yeah. Like, go to him and say, throw me the dang ball.
Right.
1,000% I'm on board with that. But you guys are up, and you're up big. Like, dude, shut your mouth and play the game. And so if that develops any sort of chemistry issues with him and Jalen Hurts, that could be a big story throughout the year. Just because, I mean, he had a subpar week 1 as well. I don't think he has a touchdown at all yet. He had one Thursday called back because of penalty holding call. But I think that's something to watch throughout the season, because that, to me, says a lot about AJ Brown. To be very transparent, like, I mean, if you're going to be sitting there complaining about your touches when you guys are winning,
right?
Like, what are you going to do when it gets bad and you guys are actually losing?
Right, exactly. I mean, it goes back to, I mean, you've been saying it since day one. Wide receiver
they're divas,
yeah, type of thing. And I guess this just is more evidence to the kettle type of thing. AJ Brown, it's not a good look for AJ Brown. Obviously, with the Eagles in general, you have Devontae Smith to cover for that.
Yep.
Obviously, he had two very long receptions. I think he had 4 catches for 130 plus yards or something.
Yep. He's had 2 really, really good games.
Yep. So you have a weapon there to I guess make up for the lack of production that you're getting from AJ Brown. But at the same time, AJ Brown has to realize the defense is going to focus on you. There's going to be some games where you're the distraction type of thing. You're the one who's going to make things open up for Smith,
Dallas
Goddard, and then even DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
Swift had like 28 attempts for like 100.
He had a huge game.
Yeah, 170 yards or something. It was ridiculous. And so it's just one of those things where, you're not going to get the ball every game, but at the same time, you got to at least be like proud of yourself to be the main focus.
Be a good teammate.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, be a good teammate.
It's just one of those things where it's like, why are you even complaining? Like, this is more of a sign of respect to you type of thing. Like, we're not going to allow you to be. We think you're the game changer here. Yep. We think you're going to be the one who's going to put them over the top.
Well, and not for nothing, it puts your quarterback in a position too, because what happened on that very next drive? Jalen Hurts started forcing it to him.
Yeah, right.
And granted, it didn't lead to an interception or a turnover, but what if it did? And the only reason he was feeding you the ball was to stroke your ego.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then, I just think that we could be making something out of nothing, but at the end of the day, I think it's very telling that he's acting that way when they were up big.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll try to get that settled down over the course of the week and with coaches and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see how his responses are in further games. But it's not a good look for right now.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. All right. So those are our power rankings. We're going to go into our fantasy, and apparently we're stealing this from somebody, but we're going to call this studs and duds.
We're stealing this.
Allegedly we're stealing that term from somewhere. I don't know who, but I'll let you go first. Who are your studs this week?
Yeah. So QB Daniel Jones.
I wrote down Daniel Jones as well. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, he came back with a vengeance, but obviously, like we talked about earlier, they didn't start off hot, but he came back with a rush TD. He came back with some pass TDs.
That was the type of game from a fantasy perspective that you love.
Yep,
when your quarterback is down big and he has to just go balls to the wall and just start throwing it all over the place.
Absolutely.
It's like music to your ears when you see that. And that's exactly why.
Like they're down 17-0
like
a bad opponent.
Like old Matt Stafford with the Lions. The dude was always down and he was always throwing the ball and had crazy stat lines even though they got crushed.
And I mean, credit to Daniel Jones. You still got to go out there and make those throws and make those plays and to produce.
Yep.
So obviously, last week he was a dud. Giants didn't score any points for anybody really.
Yep.
So and to come back and just have that sort of game is really, I guess, encouraging for those people who drafted Daniel Jones to be their QB1. In terms of running backs, stud, I got Brian Robinson Jr. Obviously,
Yep.
we were, I guess, hesitant about drafting anybody on that Commanders team.
Yeah.
But credit to Ron Rivera. He's got those guys playing hard. Sam Howell is looking, I wouldn't say like the real deal, but he's looking very
Decent.
Serviceable.
Yep.
And I mean, Terry McLaurin had a 30-yard touchdown reception.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things where they got the pieces that are coming together to give you some stock in fantasy. So, and usually when it comes to those on the fence type of teams, the running back is usually the one who reaps the rewards because the running game is always something that's getting preached and wants to get implemented in every game plan regardless.
Yep.
I mean, in terms of receivers, you can go to any receiver you want, but running back is usually
you only have one or two of those. Yeah,
it's the consistent. So credit to Brian Robinson there. Wide receivers, I still can't pronounce his name, but the guy from the Rams, Puka.
Oh yeah,
Nakua.
Yeah, I think it's Nakua.
Nakua. Yeah. However you pronounce his name. Guy balled out again and against the 49ers defense.
Yeah,
way to go. He had like 15 catches. 15.
That's crazy.
So
that's crazy.
He's
who the freak is this guy?
I don't.
Where did he come from?
BYU is what I heard. Is what I read. I should say. So Storm and Mormon type of thing. So way to go to him. I got
Storm and Mormon.
Storm and Mormon.
Oh my goodness. All right.
So I mean, he's looking like a really great. I guess backup plan to Cooper Kupp over there. You all right over there?
That caught me off guard. That was so funny.
That's what they call Taysom Hill.
I know.
Any moment that comes out of BYU. But yeah, credit to Puka. Puka.
All right, who are your duds?
My duds, I got Justin Fields, Chicago.
Yep.
He's just not producing at the level we anticipated. I was excited for that offense to come into the season, so it's really discouraging to see all that kind of go to waste type of thing. And then running back Joshua Kelly, obviously
I wrote him down as well.
Obviously with Eckler out,
I had huge hopes for him this week. Huge expectations for him.
Yep. Obviously the Titans' run defense isn't anything to sneeze at type of thing, but the way the Chargers kind of like run the ball, they're really effective running the ball, especially with Eckler for a while, and then
Well, I mean, Josh, he took off last week when Eckler was in the game, so you'd think that with him out, you
don't have any competition for those touches, but. It's just one of those things. I guess it's just a bad matchup overall with the Titans' rush defense. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley, I had there. He didn't produce too much this year. It looked like the game plan was more towards Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
Unlike last week, which was vice versa.
Flip-flopped. Yep.
So it's going to be one of those interesting things to keep an eye on. Because when I came into this fantasy season, I did say Trevor Lawrence is going to be that base. In terms of how that fantasy production is directed. And obviously every team has the way they're going to direct it towards a wide receiver, a running back, or a quarterback. And Jacksonville looks like it's going to be Trevor Lawrence deciding who's going to get the ball. Whether it's going to be Ridley on a certain day or it's going to be Kirk. And today just happened to be Kirk. So unfortunately for Ridley owners.
Yeah.
And then tight end, Kyle Pitts. He didn't produce too much.
We are just same brain, dude. Same brain.
Same thing?
Same brain.
Stop copying me.
We should talk about this ahead of time.
Yeah, probably. Who to get so I can pick somebody else. Oh no. But yeah, Kyle Pitts. I mean, Drake London didn't have a catch or anything.
2 weeks in a row for Kyle Pitts. That's why I wrote him down. He had like 3.5 this week, and I think he had 5 point something points last week.
Last week either.
Hardly anything.
I mean, he's a physical specimen too. It's just one of those things where Ritter doesn't. And he's had a quote on it. I can't remember the exact quote, but he says, "I'm not going to force the ball and stuff like that. I'm not going to pass the ball because right now I don't need to. Like I'll pass the ball when I feel the need to, type of thing." So he's not out there going to look to put fantasy numbers up and all that jazz. But it's going to be definitely one of those headaches throughout the year of whether you're going to start a Falcon or not. But like I said, it's going to be one of those things where the running game is always consistent. So Bijan Robinson owners.
He had a great game.
Yep, Bijan
Great
Robinson. They're starting to realize he's probably the better runner between him and Algier. So you're probably Bijan Robinson owners, whoever picked him in the first round. I think this is when you're going to start reaping the benefits of that.
Yep.
Of that what you call it? Those that pick.
Yep. Agreed. All right, so I wasn't as smart as you. I didn't go based on position like you did. I didn't go quarterback, running back, wide receiver.
Oh,
I basically just did
whoever.
Yeah, whoever. So my two studs, because I wrote down Daniel Jones as well for my third. So the two that you didn't have, Keenan Allen and Mike Evans. Both of them had basically just over and just shy of 30 points
right
this week. And that's 2 weeks in a row for both of them that we've talked about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like Keenan Allen, if he stays healthy, he's in store for a good year.
Yeah, his biggest question is always health.
Yep. And Mike Evans, he and Baker Mayfield are really backing me up with my Tampa Bay prediction so far.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for that.
I have nothing to say about that.
Long season. But we'll see. And then my bust, I also had Joshua Kelly and Kyle Pitts. Mm-hmm. The only addition I wrote down there was Breece Hall, just coming off of the game that he had on Monday, where he was just dynamic.
Right.
Had a ton of long plays. The Jets as a whole had 170 rushing yards. I think Breece Hall today had literally 0.9 fantasy points, 0.9,
right.
Which nobody on the Jets, short of Garrett Wilson, did anything today. So.
Right, and
he'll bounce back. I'm not worried about that. But he was definitely a bust today.
Right, it definitely brings up to mind. I mean, last week, I wonder how much the Bills prepared for Aaron Rodgers type of thing, more of a throwing type of game plan rather than running game plan, and that kind of backfired on them because obviously Rodgers went down on 4 plays, and they just had to change their offensive scheme. And I don't think the Bills were ready for that. Obviously, you can't be ready for that. You don't expect the opposing player to get injured that early in. But obviously coming into today with the Cowboys, obviously you have a lot of playmakers on all levels there. Granted, Michael Parsons being definitely the biggest one there. And to their credit, to his effect, he's on the defensive line. So he's the first one that's going to meet a running back there and the first one to get a quarterback in pass plays. So it's just one of those things where I'm wondering if Breece Hall is going to bounce back as much as we hope he does. Because the game planning is definitely going to be stop the run against the Jets.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Everybody in the state of Texas knew that the Jets' game plan today was going to be just run the ball.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good point and something to look out for. Next week. So, all right, those are our studs and duds. So we're going to wrap up the episode by making our picks for next week. So as of right now, I went 1-1 again last week. The game I got wrong was my upset pick. In fairness to me, I picked the Jets over the Cowboys pre-Aaron Rodgers injury.
Yeah.
So I probably would not have picked that had Rodgers been unhealthy on Sunday, but it is what it is.
Right.
Jeff was 2-0 last week with his pick, so he's sitting at 4-0 for the week or for the season, and I'm sitting at 2-2. So I'll let you go with your picks this week.
Okay, so I got for my lock, I got the Cowboys over the Cardinals.
Yep.
I just think the Cardinals
that's pretty safe.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals are just going to be overmatched on that one. And then the upset, I got the Saints over the Packers. The Packers are 2.5-point favorites.
Yep.
They're in Green Bay. So obviously the Saints play tomorrow. It's kind of a homer pick, but I think the Saints
that's a good one, though.
I definitely think the Saints definitely have the weapons and the defense to travel to Green Bay. Obviously, not having Kamara there is that's probably the one game that I'm most, I guess, afraid of with not having Kamara there because Jordan Love's looked pretty good.
Looked really good.
He looked
3
really
touchdowns
good.
Again today.
Yep. So two weeks in a row where he has three touchdowns. So their offense looks really good. Their defense is being a little bit left to desire, but at the same time, they didn't have much answers or any answers really for Desmond Ridder running. So, and that's one of those things where Derek Carr is not a mobile quarterback. But at the same time, I still feel like the Saints have that defense to kind of infuse problems with Jordan Love. So that'll be my upset pick for next week.
My lock is the Dolphins over the Broncos. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I think the Dolphins are really good. I think the Broncos are not that good. So I feel pretty confident about that one. My upset is the Vikings over the Chargers. Chargers are favored by a point.
A point.
So that's a pretty even game. But as far as strictly upsets are concerned, the Vikings are technically the underdog, and I think I'm more high on the Vikings right now than I am the Chargers as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, one question I'm going to have is, like, obviously coming in, I had major issues with the Vikings defense, and I have no issues with the Chargers offense, to be honest.
Well, that's fair. Yeah.
It's just going to be one of those things where it's going to be a big mismatch type of thing. So it'll be interesting to watch, but Vikings definitely have the offense to kind of take advantage.
That's why I picked them, because they put up, was it 28 points on the Eagles, who have a really, really good defense. Yeah. Kirk had a great stat line. He's known for bombing in primetime games, and he played great. He was not the reason they lost on Thursday.
Right.
And so their offense seems to be in stride, whereas in the opposite effect, the Chargers put up, 22 points, I think, today. The Chargers offense is not, we talked about at the beginning of the show, they're underperforming as of right now. So that's why I made that pick. But, we'll see. You're kicking my butt so far in these picks, but we'll see. We'll see what happens next week. So, all right. So we didn't get a chance to talk about the Saints this week because they play tomorrow. So we'll maybe recap their game next week, or if you want to do an instant reaction after their game tomorrow, you're more than welcome to do that.
I'll be at work, so
that's true. That's true. And nobody will more than likely tear their Achilles and have a dramatic game like last Monday against.
I hope not. I hope everybody stays healthy and we win pretty comfortably.
Yeah,
that's the hope.
I think you will. I think they will. So, all right, that is our week 2 show. Our week 2 recap. It was a good week, eventful week, lots going on, and we're in the thick of it. I feel like we're officially in football season, right? After week 1 was kind of fun and exciting. It's here now. 2 weeks are in the books, and we're in it.
Yeah, this is where you start seeing how these teams are going to start shaping out during the course of the year, and this is where the real season starts.
Yep,
mid-season,
no doubt.
Yep.
All right, so we will see you next week for our week 3 recap.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to What Did They Know podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media outlets to see future episode details, and don't forget to send in any questions or topics that you want to see the guys discuss in their weekly episodes to come.